Hello again, this is the 8th of November 2022 and I haven't quite finished all I have to say on the subject of homeschooling, although I went on about it for 40 minutes last time. Let's see how long I can manage in part 2. I was sort of going through various comments I've had about homeschooling. Both good and bad, and addressing some general issues with the education system. So I shall continue with that. I mean, one thing that I've heard a couple of times is it's sort of quite a privileged thing. You can't homeschool if you have to work. If you and your partner both work, then it's an ideal, but you cannot homeschool. I mean, I think the thing is, if you and your partner both work, anything to do with raising children is going to be difficult. Taking them to school is difficult. I mean it comes from this sort of idea that a lot of people have, that school is childcare, and it's not. It is more of an arranged activity that once you sign up for it is compulsory. There is a start time, there is an end time, it's not negotiable. I mean, some of them have, morning and evening clubs and things that you could have. But again, it's the start and finish time is solid on that. If you start work at 8 and school starts at 9, you can't go and leave your kid there for an extra hour. And work as well is a very broad church. Work happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 366 in a leap year. Whereas school is a few hours a day, 5 days a week, term time only, which does not make for ideal childcare unless you happen to work in a school. I mean, there are ways around it. If you work, you can. If you work nights, for example, you can sleep while the kids are at school. And have the other parent there at night time. There's ways people do it. Or they get a supermarket job where they can just sort of arrange to do 4 hours in the middle of the day and then go and pick the kids up. But ultimately, work does not happen around school hours, by and large. School is difficult if you and your partner both work. And then once you come home from work, you've got to make sure the kids have got their clean uniform and their clean PE kit and their dinner for tomorrow and everything. And it's not just a place where you can send them off and forget about them. It does require a lot of input from the parents, probably nearly as much as homeschooling does, really. And the only difference really is that it does save you some money. As I mentioned in the first one, it's a few hours a day that you don't have to pay, to have your child in a setting that may not be ideal childcare, but is at least legal. Homeschooling is difficult if you and your partner both have to work. You work your way around it. If one of you works from home, maybe, or there's various ways of doing it. You just sort of sort your life out the same way that you do if your child is in school. You arrange for someone to take them and pick them up if you're at work. You arrange for someone to look after them if they're at home. The same way that school-going parents do in school holidays. What do they do for the whole of August if they both have to go to work? or there's only one parent, who's trying to work and, get their child off to school and pick them up every day and look after them in the evenings. I was quite lucky when I was a child because my mum worked shifts. She was a nurse. She worked shifts. But we had my grandparents sort of literally just round the corner. So, I could run down to my grandparents' house whenever I needed to. As soon as she was going out to work, I could just drop me off at my grandparents on the way. And they were able to get me there and back. But it's not something that everybody has. What do people do if they work longer than school hours? I don't know. Everything is difficult if both parents work, and school is. I can't imagine it's significantly easier. You just have to try and work something out, as everybody does. I think as well, the idea that parents go to work, in a way, it is part of, the educational experience you are providing. What do people do all day? Do children in school really have any idea what their parents are getting up to? While they're there? Do they even think about it? The idea of what you are going to do when you leave school is quite an alien concept until, they're actually sort of approaching leaving age and have to actually think what are they going to do. The idea that not everybody works a 9 to 5 as well. There's a kind of assumption, I think, when people talk about work, that there is this, that it happens Monday to Friday. It doesn't. Work is a very broad church. And I think it really does, help children to sort of understand how things operate, how real life happens, to see what their parents are actually doing. If one parent is a stay-at-home parent and one works full-time, I think that's, both work part-time, however they arrange it. I think it's beneficial for them to, see what grown-ups actually do, and how they sort these things out, and the discussions they're actually having. So they are prepared to arrange their own life when the time comes. And to talk to their parents about their work. Move on. There's a kind of assumption as well that school gives a good grounding in, basic general knowledge, things that you will need to know to get you through life. Just some sort of facts and figures about the world and, sort of history and geography and, things you may be interested in, as well as essentials. But I don't know that it does necessarily. I think the sort of mentality that, you're pushed into in school is that... Oh, there was my clock again. I really need to stop doing this. I do it because I like this backdrop, this map. This clock keeps going on. Maybe time it a bit better, I don't know. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, there's kind of an assumption that school is there to, give you a sort of broad knowledge, but I I think the mentality that it pushes you into is very much, you'll need to know this to pass your exam. And also, there's so many things that once you leave school you have to learn on the job. You know, I never learnt anything about sort of how to manage finances, or I learned very little about, you know, how healthy eating and, you know, general personal hygiene and generally, you know, body care type things. I learned nothing about law. I learned nothing about politics. I mean, these are all things I have had to work out for myself. And, you know, the things that you do learn at school, you know, all this general history and geography and, you know, things you may be interested in, they, well, a lot of people, you know, once they've done their exams, they just forget all about it. I mean, you know, if it, take your average pupil who sort of ticks along at school and passes most, if not all, of their GCSEs with a reasonable grades and everything. You know, not a particular high flyer who's going to go on to secondary, you know, higher education or anything, but, you know, has a decent grounding in most things. Do they know? Do they actually know? You know, will they remember the rest of their life things like, you know, what's the structure of an atom? Can they give me a brief synopsis of Hamlet? Can they recite their 6 times table? You know, all the things that, you know, aren't vital knowledge, but, you know, they're all things that they learned at school, you know, that they needed for their exams. But, you know, unless they actually, you know, want to study these things in detail and go into a career in a particular field, it's not something that they'll ever go over again, or particularly need or want to remember. I mean, if you do know these things, if you do know, you know, how many metres are there in a kilometre, if you do know what year did Queen Victoria die, you know, you think, well, that's basic knowledge, everybody knows that, but you would be absolutely amazed how many can't. I mean, if you just, you know, scroll through social media or comment on a more popular channel than this one, you know, you will see, you know, probably a majority of people have zero idea how to spell and punctuate. I mean, even in print sometimes, you know, in signs and things, you see apostrophes where there shouldn't be apostrophes. You know, someone's actually got a job writing signs who has no idea where to put an apostrophe. And these are, you know, things that everybody learns at school and then goes on to forget. But on the other hand, you know, if they're all managing to get through life without this knowledge, do their children actually need to know it? You know, I mean, somebody asked me once, so what do you do if you don't know anything? Well, I mean, there's 3 answers to that. I mean, one is you could send your children to school. You know, the schools exist. You are allowed to do that. I'm not going to, you know, recommend homeschooling to everybody. You know, if you want to send your kid to school, if you think they would benefit from it, then, you know, you do you. You know, I'm doing this to sort of defend my own decision, not to influence anybody else's. I mean, the second answer is, well, clearly you've managed to limp through life without all this knowledge that's apparently so vital, so, you know, do your kids need it as well? I mean, knowledge is power, gives them choices, etc., but, you know, once they can read or write, you know, they can sort of study anything they want, really. You know, you can look it up on the internet if you think it's particularly beneficial for them to know any particular fact or figure, you know. And the other one is, if you don't know a specific thing, there's plenty of help online. If your history is not particularly good, say, you can sort of muddle through most things, but you don't really know any history. Maybe if you're from a different country or something, and the history that is taught in this country isn't really the same history that whatever. You can start reading books about history. You can look at websites about history. You can sort of think, who was so and so historical figure, who was Oliver Cromwell, who was Isambard Kingdom Brunel, whatever, and actually look up biographies of these people. There are ways of learning things, and there are ways of showing your children what these things are. You sort of educate yourself as well as your child. I think there is a mindset as well that school is like an end in itself. Some sort of idea that going to school is in itself just a good thing to do. Whatever you're actually doing there, whoever you're mixing with, whatever you're learning, whether you are learning anything, just going to school is, an objective ticked off. Probably because, parents and teachers just have to spend so much time persuading children that, school is beneficial to them. A lot of them just sort of carry that through life, school good. Whether they enjoyed it or not, whether they have actually, had any benefit from it. I just think it's like at worst, a necessary evil. It is something that you have to do. It is the only way of getting an education. I think they don't realise that it's optional a lot of the time. They think there has to be some sort of special circumstance to not go to school. There isn't. There isn't. You opt in to school. You get a letter through the post saying, your child is of an age you must sign up for school. But if you don't respond to it, or you respond and say, I've chosen to homeschool my child, that's fine. You don't have to give an excuse. It is entirely up to you. It takes a lot of unlearning. I've actually noticed, strangely, that a lot of the parents in home ed groups are or think they may be autistic. As soon as I tell someone, I'm autistic, now probably more often than not they say, I think I might have a bit of that, or I'm definitely autistic. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. One is, it might just be the cluster phenomenon, obviously. I think one reason is, we do tend to have a bit of a rough time at school generally, with bullying and just the whole experience not really being tailored for us. And also, the sort of autistic mentality of questioning social norms. Why do I have to go along with this? And it, once you realise that you don't actually have to go to school, it it does become a well, almost a nonsense. You know, why would you send your child to school unless there was some sort of specific circumstance that meant you had to? I think a lot of kids come out of school quite institutionalised. You spend 12 years being told to sit down and be quiet and do as you're told and answer to bells. You will be in this room at this time and you may only leave at this time. You may not have a drink of water. You may not eat except at designated times. You must ask to go to the toilet. This all this kind of thing. It drills into people's heads. And then when you actually leave school, and employers want employees who have initiative, they start thinking, well, I'm unprepared for all this. I don't know what anybody wants from me anymore. And I think I find, amongst people I've come across in life, some of them find they can, get away with murder at school. They just find ways of sort of sneaking under the radar, bending rules. Well, I mean the whole idea of bullying. I mean that's a big issue in school, isn't it? I mean it's almost seen as an inevitable thing. Oh, don't give your child an unusual name because they'll get bullied. Oh, gay couples shouldn't get married because the kids will get bullied. It's whenever someone kind of disagrees with something and they can't really explain what it is that makes them go, ugh, oh, the children will get bullied, is kind of a go-to response. And it seems quite a big fear. And then people fear their children being bullied a lot more than they fear their child becoming a bully. And then these people who get away with it at school, go on in life. They go on to become, bosses that mistreat the workers, become abusive partners and parents. They get stuck in that mentality of, I can push people around. We know, I've covered in previous films that, bullying goes on very, very commonly at school, and they all have this sort of anti-bullying policy. We will absolutely not tolerate any of these activities, And then they actually try and report it to somebody, and it's they're sort of swept under the carpet, or they get told, now, stop doing that, please. Run along. And it never gets sorted out. And then the people who are victims at school, the victims of bullying, so they sort of very often get these sort of terrible complexes and, go on to, grow up believing that they will always be a victim, that they are not likeable. They have sort of self-esteem issues and things. But whatever it was they got bullied for is some sort of flaw in their personality or their appearance or whatever it happens to be. I'm sure you can fill in the blanks there. Yes, your personality at school, what you are, when you're 14, goes on, does sort of follow you through life a long time, unless you actually do some serious thinking and questioning of yourself, and work out that that's not really how it is. I mean, I know people kind of in their 20s who still sort of behave in some way like, you know, they've still got this sort of popularity contest going on there, this competitive normality thing that, you know, you're kind of expected to take part in when you're a teenager. And they just never really grow out of it. And they're sort of, I'm older than you. I'm older than, yeah, I know. Yeah, I have. I've discussed sort of generational astrology thing before. It's yeah, there is a very strong belief amongst the general population that age equals wisdom. No, clearly it doesn't. And it, I mean, well, my theory is that it goes back to, you know, the kind of segregation by age in school. You know, you take that away, you know, you just sort of let children mix together, you know, whether they're 5 or 6 or 7, they'll find something to entertain each other. No, I mean maybe not a teenager and a little kid or anything, but, you know, as long as they're sort of within a few years of each other, you know, they can play quite happily. They can enjoy the same cartoons or whatever it is they're into, you know, computer games. What do kids do these days? I don't know. Yeah, that's very weird, that sort of separation. But there's no other time in your life when you are grouped together only with people who are within a year or so of you in age. And then you get the summer children who are actually a year younger than the autumn-born children. So they're actually closer in age to the kids in the year below, but they're expected to function at the level of, you know, the ones who are nearly a year older than they are. And that's it's another of these things. You think, well, yeah, but what could they do differently? How could they rearrange that? It's like I was talking last time about, you know, how they deal with kids with dyslexia. You know, they sort of sit them together on a table, and, you know, they get extra help from the teacher and the classroom assistant. Well, how do you deal with a dyslexic child then in a classroom situation? I mean, there isn't a good way of doing it. I mean, if they were sort of generally, you know, in classes dependent on their overall ability as opposed to their age, you know, that could sort of work for a few things. But then what do you do if, you know, there's a child who's really good at academic stuff but, you know, absolutely terrible at PE, for example, or who's, you know, very, very, very arty but has no idea about science? I mean, sooner or later they'd, you know, have to go to secondary school, and how would you work that out? I mean, I know there are some countries where, you know, children can be held back a year if they don't pass their exams. But again, you're expected to just sort of be at a certain level in everything. And, you know, especially when you go to secondary school and you have different teachers for different subjects, you know, you're kind of expected to be good at everything as well. I mean, I'm sure teachers are aware that, you know, most kids are, you know, have certain talents and certain things that they're not so good at, but, you know, you know, say the PE teacher sort of notices one kid getting behind, You know, their response isn't necessarily, oh, well, I bet she's really good at English, though. Or, oh, well, yeah, she's probably better at art. You know, it's, you know, to give them a bad report or a bad grade because, you know, they can't do what is being asked of them in that particular lesson. You know, you're expected to get 9 GCSEs. I mean, that's 9 subjects that you're expected to do at least reasonably well in. Does anybody have that kind of all-round ability? I mean, I got my 9 GCSEs. I didn't get an A star in everything. You know, I mean, some things I got a B or a C in. There were things that, you know, my mum looked at my my GCSE certificate and thought, oh, you didn't do so well in that. And certainly if I'd have done GCSE PE, I think I'd have got a U. Anyway, enough of that. Yeah, you still, you know, get downgraded for, you know, the things you're bad at if you're getting good grades in other subjects. It's all a bit of a nonsense, really. You know, is this pupil, you know, performing at a particular level or not? And then, you know, you have to get there's certain subjects where you have to do like a practical exam and coursework and a written exam. And I mean, the idea is that different people are better at different things, but, you know, to get the high mark, you have to do well at all of them. It's yeah, there's some sort of disconnect there. I think some sort of logical disconnect. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to repeat myself. I think I don't like repeating myself. I think I already have done. Yes, I'll see you in the next one. Don't know if there will be a part 3. Perhaps there will. I'll see you in the next one.